is need for inclusivity. We would like to welcome the Honorable Minister for Higher Education, C.N. Ashwanath Narayan from the Government of Karnataka. He will start a morning opening speech. So welcome to the session. This, for the audience's note, the speech will be followed by a panel discussion, which will feature Sri Gopal Krishna Joshi, Executive Director, KSHEC, Mr. Pradeep P, Commissioner, Department of Collegiate Education, Government of Karnataka, Mr. Anil Joseph Pinto, Registrar, Crest University, and to give a representation from the industry is Mr. Supreet Nagaraju, Head Education, Digital Media, India and South Asia, Adobe. Uh, Over to you, sir. Minister C.N. Ashwanath Narayan. So we are facing a slight technical issue from the minister's office. Just give us some time to this.
बच्चे लोग कान बंद कर दो एक्चुअली I remove my left breast. Husband को पूछा मैंने let's get that artificial thing done तो उसने बोला नहीं ठीक है एक से काम चला लेगा
When I had to go for my classes in college, there were a lot of instances wherein the bus used to be in front of me and I couldn't run.
क्या रे झंगूर कैसा है तेरा क्या इतना
So while we wait for the honorable ministers to join us, meanwhile, can you please start the panel discussion? I pass over this to my colleague Ralph.
Good morning, everyone. So, to begin with, as Anushri had introduced, we'll just begin with a question to Mr. Joshi, the Executive Director of the Karnataka State Higher Education Council. Sir, so Karnataka has been in the forefront of using technology in education when you see on the Indian landscape for the past few years. So, what can be actually highlighted as something that Karnataka has done differently in the at least in the last 3 years or so, sir? Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah. See, you need to know in terms of using technology, the perspectives are three-dimensional connect with the learner. Learner's engagement with content, learner's engagement with instructors, and learner's engagement with peers. So these three-dimensional connect of the learner guarantees learning. Learning happens through these collaborations. So when it is in-person classes, and due to COVID, there was a faster adoption of technology, and to our good luck, there was a thought process going on in the government in terms of using technology. So if you see, there is one big initiative by name Karnataka LMS, which Shri Pradeep, the commissioner, is the architect of that, and then he will tell you possibly more about it, which is where you will see lot of content made available to learners, and assessment is also made part of it. So these two things are made part of it in terms of technology. Another beauty of this technology is very much connected to inclusivity. How do people from non-urban areas, rural areas where there is poor connectivity, and how are these issues related to connectivity and non-affordability of gadgets addressed? If you see, uh, the tab that was given for the first time, did address the concern of edge device, and that has memory as well. So in case people suffer from bandwidth, they still can be downloading the videos and then they will be using it. So inclusivity is embedded in the solution, which is an integrated solution. However, if you look at blending of things, technology has to mature, usage has to mature, the entire ecosystem has to mature. It will take some time. Currently, it is all in a lot of experimentation stage. I see a huge acceptance, and the speed at which it was implemented, it has really helped the children adopt, especially during the days of COVID.
Yes, so we were speaking about inclusivity as well. So during COVID, this was a major concern whether there'd be we already have a digital divide. For example, people in rural areas, people versus people in urban areas. So students had connectivity issues back then. But then, speaking about that, and on the same lines, we are also considering the importance of digital literacy these days. So, just a question to Mr. Pradeep. So, I just wanted to discuss something with you related to how digital literacy is now being made a mandatory factor for government institutions as well as private institutions, again linking to our student community. And how is this going to upgrade the education system as to how it was pre digital literacy days? Sir, Mr. Pradeep, we are unable to hear you. I guess we need to connect your audio device as well because that has not been shown yet on the call.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, good morning, Alex. So with respect to digital literacy, one thing I would like to say is the students, at least at the higher education level, are more than literate with respect to digital solutions. Because of the usage of social media and everything, Facebook, WhatsApp, and the video calls and everything. So they are much more, they are at a much better position to use the digital tools. So what we focused during, you were referring to the COVID period. During that time, if you can see in our government colleges and teachers, the adoption of technology in terms of even giving even explaining things through a PPT, PowerPoint presentation was about 10 to 15%. That's all. So the huge adoption in terms of digital adoption was from the side of the teachers. So during COVID, more than 70,000 online classes were conducted. Teachers started preparing their own PPTs, study materials, and they shared it. They formed WhatsApp groups of their own students. They shared their content. So during COVID, that adoption, which was maybe supposed to happen in a decade, it happened in a year. I can tell you that with respect to education, at least. So it was the adoption was much more required, and it was done on the side of the teachers. Students are almost digitally well versed now.
So, was there anything in particular that we looked at while training the teachers, because they were not as much as well versed with digital tools as you were speaking about students? So, what did the government do then as an immediate crisis management action?
See, at the time, the one thing, as I already said, you can hear me, right? Yeah,
Yes.
the one thing, as I already said, with respect to the teachers was many of the teachers were a bit aged. They were not used to giving a PPT, preparing a PPT, or explaining things to a PPT, or using a video conference tool. So this we trained our teachers, and we have a beautiful blend of young and experienced teachers. So these young teachers, they helped a lot. The other teachers, their own adapting to these digital solutions. So that happened, and the output, as I've already said, we conducted more than 70,000 online classes. So the adoption, it could happen only because of all the help from the remaining young teachers.
Yes, yes.
And one thing we observed during, with respect to students, was more than 60% of students, as majority of the students come from rural background and from socially and economically backward sections. One thing we observed was more than 60% of students didn't have even a smartphone. So that is the one we try to address using the digital learning concept of Government of Karnataka in the higher education space, wherein we have provided even the devices. We are providing devices to each and every student, and we have also designed the Karnataka learning management system in such a way that it work both online and offline. So it is not technology; it is not network dependent now.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
Hi Raj, just to cut in between, I think the Honorable Minister has joined. So if you could start the speech, sir. Hi, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Shall I?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead. We have been waiting for you to join.
Yeah. Good morning. I would like to first of all congratulate Indian Express for conducting the national seminar on the national education policy. I think the much needed reforms has been brought in through the national education policy in the field of education. It is going to make a huge transformation, a much needed transformation for our country, because through education only we can address almost all the concerns what we are facing in the society in the terms of socially, politically, economically, and getting solution for all the problems what is been faced in the society. Probably education has been existing for centuries, but a right and relevant education to the times is very important. Providing a quality education through the education, empowering the people is the most important. And we have been talking about the equality, inclusiveness, and many issues, many challenges in the society. With regard to the basic understanding is how to take care of ourselves. How to take care of ourselves is the most important aspect. So we have been seeing and we have been watching helplessly many a times that though we have such a knowledge encouraging and knowledge dependent society, even then we have been giving a lot of emphasis, but we are not able to correct the path in the education. So fully realizing that after 34 years, there are not much reforms been brought in the education system. Our Honorable Prime Minister took the leadership of bringing the reforms across the country, so that through the concurrent subject, we are able to have a commonness in the education framework. In the framework, uh, by bringing this, we can ensure that across the country, the education can be strengthened in much desirable way to the relevant to the time, particularly with regard to the aspects of uh, empowering and allowing the institution to have the autonomy to just what is relevant to the time, particularly with regard to the core concept to get away from the rote learning. Whatever they used to gain, it used to be just most of the time it is to be how to pass the exam, how to get a qualification. The real meaningful education was really missing in the existing education system. So we are denying the students the right education. So the much reforms what has been brought in the way, the student needs to be taught, and it has been made student centric, and it is ensuring whatever needs to be done to ensure that the student will learn in a appropriate, meaningful, holistic way of learning. Thereby, the knowledge what he gains can be applied in his life, or whatever problems he is going to face in his profession or in the society or in his living can be solved through his learning. And that kind of a right education will be provided through the present national education policy, where we are going to emphasize more on the core concept we are going to emphasize and ensure it is going to learn properly in a holistic way, not in isolation, not in bits and pieces. If personality will be strengthened in all aspects, let it be physically, mentally, and hands-on experience, and understanding the challenges what is being faced in the society. He'll not learn anything in silos, in isolation. He'll be part of the happening what has been happening in the society. He'll be able to learn on a life basis and connected with the ongoing challenges, ongoing incidents, ongoing issues. They will be able to connect and have a better knowledge. So, in this direction, the state of Karnataka, we took a decision to implement the national education policy from the year 2021. Now, we have just started with the higher education since the primary.
Hello, everyone. I think the Honorable Minister is back again. There was some glitch in his internet. So just give us 2 minutes. Yes, sir. Sir, you're on mute. Thank you, sir.
How we have made use of the technology to promote the education, to strengthen how we have made use of the technology and to ensure how the learning happens, and we have made it completely student centric, and the water learning the digital platform, and ensure the learning is done properly, appropriately, and interventions can be done on all the levels. Thereby, each and every student learning will improve drastically, not in 1x or 2x. It will improve in a much more bigger way. And we're able to make use of the existing, all the available infrastructure in the system. It is not just limiting to an institution or a classroom. We're trying to make use of all the facility, whatever is available in the society and system. We are trying to make use of the entire system, and such kind of flexibility has been brought in for us to make use of it. And in the learning also, we have brought in a lot of flexibility, the choice of subject, multidisciplinary, multi-entry, multi-exit, and experiential learning. and all best practices have been included, and thereby even the evaluation system has been changed completely. We have brought in the formative assessment on daily basis. We're able to assess them and improvise and ensure it's second to none in the entire world. The entire world will not be second to none. Show how our society can sustain and overcome all the challenge reputation what we are getting, since the entire world has become globalized and reputation, and we can't give any reason we are a developing country, others are a developed country. All these reasons cannot be given. We have to be number one, and we need to be the best. I think all these things can be addressed through a right education, and with regard to all the aspects what I mentioned, with regard to how to take care of them in the terms of health, socially, every aspect will be promoted. And I'm of the full of the confidence that National Education Policy 2020 is going to make a huge difference in the society and in the betterment and having a better future for our youngsters. The millennials will get a better future. With these few words, I would like to stop here. And state of Karnataka, we are doing whatever needs to be done in this direction with regard to the academic reforms what we have brought in. Similarly, we will bring in the legislation and structural changes, administrative changes, and whatever required reforms need to be brought in. We will that the best possible education system and facility will be provided to the children of our state.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the time. I now hand over the conversation to my colleague Ralph again. Ralph, if you have any question for
Yeah.
sir, and then we can carry forward the discussion, please.
Yeah, please. You're most welcome to us.
Yes, so we were speaking about inclusivity and how the digital tools would be made available to students across Karnataka. So, especially, we always speak a bit about Bangalore centric kind of development when we see from the Karnataka perspective. So, beyond Bengaluru, what are we trying to do, especially in terms of implementing the national education policy, as well as to increase the digital reach to the students to bridge this particular divide?
With regard to this, already my commissioner has made a few of the statements, but once again, I'll repeat. With regard to this digitalization of the education, which we have been doing it for the past 2 years, in this direction, it has become very conducive and it has come handy for us to implement the national education policy very effectively and to counter and to manage in the COVID-19 situation. Also, we have now completely digitalized the entire content, and through the learning management system, we are able to provide the content and as well as strengthen the education system. And parallelly, internet-enabled smart classrooms are being developed, and we have provided a device to all the student who is pursuing education in the government institution. We have been providing them the device free of cost to all the students who are studying in polytechnic, engineering, degree institution. We have been providing to them, and we have done every possible. We have taken all possible measures to ensure that the people living beyond Bangalore, you should not be denied of any kind of facility. Particularly, digital is more level and it can be provided to the all sections of society, and it is completely inclusive. Whoever has been denied so far the quality education based on the data available, we are given topmost priority for the sanitizing and ensuring the present reforms what has been brought is mainly to help the socially disadvantaged economic group for them to come up, and it should become the real leveler, and it should be inclusive, it should be equitable. Very, very meaningfully, very well just the other sections of society where has been denied so far. And technology has been made use to provide the good education to everybody in the society.
Yes, just one more query, sir. So, related to how the national education policy is being implemented now, so we have been discussing about how this new policy would offer autonomy more to institutions. So, when we're looking at, we have representatives from private universities in Karnataka as well in this particular discussion. So, just to include them as well. So, when an autonomous college or a university comes up with a certain set of learning tools, and when we are looking at the government side, what are we trying to do to bridge this particular gap, public and private institutions, and the quality of education that is being given to them? Because we were speaking about autonomy as well. So, how much of autonomy do government institutes also have these days?
See, the with the spread out timeline, we have taken a timeline of 10 years. In this direction, we have initiated the basic process of bringing in the structural changes in each and every institution and in the system, and as well as the administrative reforms, so that we'll be decentralizing the entire system, where we are looking as early as possible. We are trying to give the entire autonomy to each and every institution, so that in the concept of the board of governors and the board of management, we want the local community to be important stakeholder, so that their future can be built. See, they need to strongly believe of their future has to be built. Their future can be built through this institution. So this kind of strong belief we want to bring in among the people. So for your betterment, this institution is going to make a difference not only in the lives of the individuals and the entire system and society. They can change whatever concerns with regard to the sustainability of the environment, or conservation of the biodiversity, or the water management, waste management, social problems, health issues, economic issues, everything. All these things can be addressed through a right system building and right understanding, not as an individual, not as just as an individual, as in a community. All of us need to work together to build a better future. That kind of understanding can happen only through a right education system, and giving them the autonomy to the institution whichever is been established in the respective area. We're trying to give them that freedom so that they can perform in a very better manner to build their aspiration of emerging as the best place to live in the entire world. Probably in this direction, we are not trying to restrict anybody. We are prescribing the minimum. We are prescribing the minimum. Maximum can be taken to whatever levels the individual person is interested, the individual institution, whichever levels it wants to take up, they are free to do it. But we can't insist too much. We can insist to the minimum what levels it can be taken. And more so, earlier the facilities has to be there in the institution. Now that kind of system is not going to be there. Wherever the facility, common facility, let it be in some other institution, some other industry, they can go and avail. Not necessarily it has to be in the institution. Ultimately, we want that student to learn. He needs to get an opportunity to learn. That should not be denied. That is what ultimately we are going to measure based on the learning outcomes. It is not just an infrastructure been said, not put into use also, it's got no meaning. So in all these aspects, today we can do a lot of measurement. Based on that, we can bring in a lot of healthy growth in the particularly on our society, and we can't any wait anymore, because the competition and because of the globalization, how what pace we have been moving. We need to catch up. We need to catch up, and we need to transform our society. So in this direction, we are giving the freedom. We are not trying to hold on. We are not trying to do any policeman here. We are giving them the complete freedom to ensure only one aim. It is to provide a quality education for a better future of the society and that individual.
Yes, one more thing, sir. Off lately, we've been seeing a lot of MOUs being signed by the Karnataka government with different industry players, be it Infosys, NASCOM, to give a couple of examples. The Springbrook platform that we are trying to implement in the colleges here as well. So, what are the possibilities of these kind of a PPP, probably collaborations with industry players, and what are your thoughts on bringing that to academia? Being Karnataka being a tech hub also, and you being the minister for ITBT as well. So all this.
See, many programs have been designed by Government of India, by different departments, different agencies, different industry partners, and they want to build a more better system and a better learning system. So whatever has been developed by them, we are trying to make best use of it, avail of the facility of the program. So in this direction, reaching out to them, integrating and ensuring that the benefits, whatever has been the programs, whatever has been developed, it has to be reached out to the last man or the student who are learning. So by bringing this kind of MOUs and ensuring it has been integrated into the curriculum and to their exam, we can ensure they're employable, industry ready, relevant, and particularly the emerging technology and emerging skills needs to be learned. And by providing this, we'll be ahead of others in the market, and will be ensuring and empowering all the students will be employable. And more so, all these things have been provided free of cost, and the government of India spent for partnering with NASCOM. Government of India spent 450 crores. Infosys is in the process of spending 750 crores. Already they have spent more than 50 crores to develop the digital content, and they're providing us 15,000 computers which will be installed in our government colleges. We had a requirement of 30,000. Cognizant provided 12,000. The Infosys has provided 15,000. Totally, all our requirement has been complied. Like this, many more things, teachers training. And all of us need to come together. See, things cannot be done in isolation. All of us need to collaborate. All of us need to help each other to achieve better things as in a society. And if we want our nation to grow and a nation to emerge much more stronger, all of us, all the partners, who are having a right resource, should be channelized, should be provided to the people who are in the process of learning. So, in this direction, MOUs with the internationalization of education. We have been doing a lot of internationalization, also collaboration, many things, training of teachers, many stakeholders, many things. This needs to be done. This is the way forward. Probably that makes a huge difference.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot for your time and taking our questions as well, sir, with good explanations to our queries. Thanks a lot for your time again, sir. We'll move back to the panel discussion that we were having before.
Thank you. Thank you. Most welcome. Most for organizing such an excellent seminar also.
Thank you. So yes, so to get back to our discussion, taking a cue from what the minister was actually speaking about the expected impact of the new national education policy and how the digital tools would be used to fill this, we'll just go towards the autonomous side as well, to Mr. Pinto from Christ deemed to be university. So the minister was speaking about how the technical technological courses and a platform that is being brought forward by Infosys, the collaborations with the government of India and NASCOM, and these kind of collaborations that are going to probably fuel a better higher education possibilities. So, from a Christ deemed to be university perspective, uh, is this something that was already being done, or does the new education policy inspire you to do better in these lines as well? Mr. Pinto?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Uh, Christ, of course, was a college under Bangalore University, started in 1969, became one of the first autonomous college in Karnataka in 2005, and became one of the first liberal arts institution in Karnataka to become a big university in 2008. So we've gone through these three phases of affiliation, autonomy, and the Deemed University. And this particular phase has been good in the sense that the autonomy phase that Christ went into gave us it was, of course, the freedom had to be really fought legally with the Anglo University Government of Karnataka, because it was initially autonomy on paper and not really autonomy in many senses. Because we were said you cannot change curriculum more than 20%, and things like that. So, and I think a lot of I'm on the governing board of other autonomous colleges in Karnataka, and I can tell you that the freedom is, the universities really, really strangulate the state. But for Christ, it was a good transition from autonomous first and then become university, in the sense that it gave us that freedom and the fear. Because when the freedom is not all good, it comes enormous fear of maintaining public credibility, and that's the biggest challenge for all the institutions under NEP is that when you become autonomous, it's not that they all will be happily lap it up. I don't think majority of them want that freedom because it's very, very daunting to establish public credibility. And I must say the diminution status actually, when I went to the national policy, I realized that practically almost everything that the policy says, which an institution can do, has already been implemented by CRISP as well as other deemed universities that I'm aware of in this country. But there are other things that the government has to do to the policy side and regulatory side. Those are, unless that changes, there are things that we cannot do. For example, Government of Karnataka as well as the NEP has said that you can go to PhD soon after your undergrad, but there is no regulatory framework to enable that, right? So there are other things that block that. For example, faculty appointment cannot be done unless you've done masters. Right? So, for example, a person from US who has undergrad 5 years and 4 years and then PhD and comes back in India, he's not employed simply because there's no any regulation. So those are, and I'm saying that these are transitional teething issues. They will be resolved. But for yes, institutions like universities, there has been an absolute freedom for a long time, and that has enabled to be what we are today and do what we can do. For example, we introduced digital courses when Coursera was introduced in 2012 in the world, and it came in 2012. We introduced embedded all these programs within all semesters in 2014, which we are now talking after pandemic. We had to stop because Max said, you cannot do it. It's a surprising thing. So the one arm of the government came down heavily on us, saying that, look, why are you doing this? This is not correct. This is not as per regulation. This is not as per that. Then we had to actually put a hard stop after 2 years of running the embedding Coursera courses within. And this is not a payment. It's not free. It's not that you're paying. Nobody was paying for this, but doing that. So, but I'm saying that, yes, freedom has mentioned a lot. I'm sure that the national policy is going to radically change the way higher education has been practiced in this country for many, many years. That certainly is a wonderful thing.
Yes. Moving on to Mr. Nagaraju, from the industry perspective. So, what is happening in the industry these days, and how can this be communicated well to the academia counterpart? Sir? Like majorly in this particular time when we are speaking about bringing in a huge policy change. So, how is this particular dialogue being taken forward? You being in Bangalore and probably having more access to the Karnataka government vehicles. How is this being done at present?
Well, firstly, thank you for the opportunity here, Ralph, Indian Express, and all the dignitaries. Very good morning. I represent Adobe as the head of education for India, and I've been in the IT industry for the last 2 decades. Now, let me not talk about the industry at large. There are multiple things happening in the industry, right? First things first, the biggest tectonic shift that has been happening in the overall Indian landscape and also in the global landscape is we are in the midst of digital first, right? Which means that we live, eat, and breathe digital. And when you look at the fundamentals of a society today, the entire fundamentals of every citizen in this country has shifted from what used to be essentials. The definition of essential itself has changed. From roti kapda makan to roti kapda makan and mobile as an area, right? Everybody today goes in for a 10 rupees recharge, using Geo as a connect, irrespective of their economic strata in the society. That's the shift that has happened in the last, I would say, at least the two years, despite we being in the middle of pandemic. Now, what's happened in terms of the industrial revolution in the last, I would say, 18 months is significant compared to what has happened in the last 3 years itself, totally, right? And we need to come to terms with that. That's the first aspect of it. And the quicker we adopt that and sink it in, the better we would be in terms of figuring out as to how we can tackle the speed at which the overall industrial revolution is seeping into every single aspect of our society and also into education, right? The very advent of a lot of edtech companies, if you were to look at the number of edtech companies that have emerged in our country, it's astonishing. It is more than the number of universities that are there in our country, right? We have 4,000 plus edtech companies in the entire, Indian landscape today, servicing different categories of the education system, from, pre-KG all the way to schooling education, all the way up to vocational education, to professional development, and even faculty development at large, And if you look at the overall spectrum of the way in which the technology and edtech companies have come forward to strengthen the overall ecosystem, they've even gone to the extent of servicing sectors which have not been covered by the formal education system at large. Now, what does it mean? It has got a plus and a minus to it as well, which means that it is clearly coming up as a supplement and a complement. And also, if you look at it from a different angle, it's also kind of coming to terms with the industry saying that, hey, I'm putting the skill and outcome at the forefront and then working backwards to achieve what is required from an industry skill gap and a need standpoint. Now, let us understand the Karnataka as a context. Karnataka has always been in the forefront of technology ever since I've been a student as well. It's always been amazing to study in any of the academic institutions, and there are some fantastic pillars in the Karnataka higher education system. Across both government and private institutions. Now, this has been a torch-bearing state for many industries, and if you talk to any of the global CEOs, Indian CEOs, and the boardrooms, if there is one place where they would like to bet on from an capacity building standpoint, it's Karnataka. Definitely, yes. Even today, it is there. Now, it's not too far for other states to catch up. It's not going to be too strenuous for other states to do that catch up, given the fact that we have liberalization happening across the education segment, NEP seeping in. Now you can study from anywhere, any place, using any device. So there is a very different shift that is happening in the overall, demand versus supply as an area, right? If you were to look at it from an industrial standpoint, today it's no longer the technology, engineering, and coding as a space. There's a whole lot of new areas that have emerged out, whether it is augmented reality as a new skill, user interface, user experience as a huge skill, or even for that matter with respect to artificial intelligence, machine learning, visual communication as an area, design as a space as a new area. So the question right now in front of the entire higher education community, whether it is public, private, and the government, is to how fast can you, look at leapfrogging into the newest arenas in addition to maintaining the leadership position in what you already have. And this cannot be done individually. They have to collaborate amongst themselves, build capacity, work very closely with the industry. And there are many industry leaders like us, Adobe, who specializes in design, web, digital marketing, and multiple areas of emerging technologies. There are many similar leaders in robotics, AI, ML, mechanical engineering part of it, mechatronics, even for that matter from communications as an area, and multiple other zones. Now, talking about a few pointers from equity and access standpoint, I've been part of many of the initiatives and conversations in Karnataka government as well, along with the higher education ministry. They've done a fantastic job in terms of creating first a level playing field from an LMS standpoint, which is essential, which is fundamental. There's no negotiations on that, and they've done it fantastically well. And now they're going into the next phase, in terms of figuring out how they can, bring in a lot more new changes. First state in the entire country to implement NEP, hats off. It's a lightning speed. I've never seen this kind of speed happening in any other state. The question right now is how far can they, stretch themselves to maintain that pole position. It's going to be really, really tough, but it's not impossible. And having said that, that's where collaborations with industry, not reinventing the wheel all over again, will make a difference. And last but not the least is the fact that education outcomes become very, very critical. Going beyond what has got you here, will make a difference, because traditionally what got you here won't get you there, and that's what happened in most of the states. And I won't get into more details of it. But the critical point that I'd like to highlight here is creativity is one big area that Adobe has been emphasizing on. We are happy to share our knowledges and best practices from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, where we have had our expertise working with the government, higher education systems, school education system, and the entire mission mode projects. Giving devices is one side of it. Second part of it is enthusing the students to be part of this, entire exercise, because learning needs to be fun. Unless and until they like it, they're not going to exercise it. It's going to be yet another, device in the hands of a student. And most important, I think, is to figure out as to how do you make them scalable, not just for today, but for tomorrow, in areas that they can encourage. And it needs to be continuous. continuous learning is a very, very critical part of it. And the last part of it, which I'd like to emphasize, is innovation. You got to kindle that, thought and idea of creating new jobs, creating new products, creating new ideas. And that will come only when you invest time, energy, money, resources into new technology areas, give them to play around with these, not just in one university or one center, but in different corners of the state. So happy to figure out as to how we can work with all of you to ensure that there is equity access across the length and breadth of Karnataka, and ensure that it's a vibrant Karnataka from an education standpoint. That's it. That's pretty much about it from my end, Ralph.
Yes. So we were speaking right now about how the government or probably institutions need to invest in resources. So just connecting something to what the place Supreet represents as well. So for example, packages from Adobe, which have been used for training students in different colleges. I've been observing and I've been told that the probably large scale colleges or institutions like Christ, Manipal, Joseph, something like that, they can afford to take these licensed packages from the software companies to be used as tools for training for students. But the same thing when it comes to other colleges that are affiliated to the state universities, they often find the budget as a major challenge towards like implementing this, getting access to these kind of emerging tools or tools in emerging technology as well. Again, to help the students build skills as they learn. Mr. Pradeep, so I just wanted to understand: is the Department of Collegiate Education trying to do something to bridge this particular gap? Because otherwise, again, we would be looking at a further divide, because students who can afford to study in these top autonomous universities by spending lots get to reach like bigger places in terms of placements and in terms of honing skills as well, but not like the others kind of becomes they be at a disadvantage otherwise. So what can be done? What is the government planning to do along with the implementation of NEP in this line?
Yes, Ralph. See, the NEP, you can hear me, right? The
Yes, we can.
the hallmark of NEP is equity and inclusion. It reserves two full chapters on equity and inclusion, and why the equity and inclusion has to be brought in at all levels of education. And for this, we need to bring in transformative changes in various aspects and various aspects of education, both primary, secondary, and higher education. See, with respect to the digital divide, I would like to say there are two types of divide now. One is the digital divide between rural and urban students, and one is a divide between the private and government institutions. See, the digital learning, which was launched about a year back under the leadership of Honorable Education Minister, Higher Education Minister, has three pillars. I would like to take a bit of your time on elaborating what are these three pillars, so that you can come to know what are we doing to bridge this digital divide. So the three pillars are: number one is the Karnataka learning management system, number two is a smart classroom, number three are the devices that we are giving. So the Karnataka LMS, I will just like to say that, for example, I'm an engineer. During my engineering days, or during your 10th or PUC, you go to tuitions. So you would have got one or the other tuition, because you go to your tuition because that particular teacher is good. The way he teaches is good, so you go to that person. So what we have done now is we got about 10,000 teachers. So across the state, we have identified the best of the teacher. For example, in history, we identified the best of the teacher, and we have recorded his teaching for 1 hour. 1 hour teaching is called a session. In a day, there will be about 5 sessions in every college, in every course. So for each and every session of 1 hour, we have given the content. The content includes one video, a video of the best teacher teaching in front of using his board and teaching the entire 1 hour video. Then a PPT for that 1 hour class. Then a summary for that 1 hour class, and an MCQ. Most importantly, a multiple choice question of 10 questions for every 1 hour class. So number one, the students will have freedom and access to best of the content. Second, we call it a comprehensive LMS. Learning management system in many states or in many other parts of the country is limited to giving the content. But until and unless you ensure that the student is actually accessing that content and understanding that content, then there's no point of having that content. Even today in YouTube and in the internet, if you go, there are millions of content available, but you're not sure whether the student is actually accessing and using that content, and the content is not curated. So we have the curated content, and so the student will have access to freedom and access to best of the content. But to understand whether he has to know whether he has actually understood that concept, we need to have assessment. So these MCQs play an important role of assessing the students. So we have given the content, so the content will be
Yeah, seems to be another technical issue. We have lost connection with Mr. Pradeep. So, Mr. Joshi, maybe
so there is
you'd be able.
teaching that we explain
Yeah.
them.
Yes, yes.
So
Sir,
you can
we lost
explain.
you in between. So we just heard you up to how you were speaking about the assessment pattern, and then
Yeah,
what is
yeah,
being
yeah.
done from the LMS.
So we have, so when we say it is a comprehensive learning management system, it tries to close the learning loop. Okay, so we have given the content. So the content, whether the student has understood the content the same day, there will be MCQ. The student has to attend those MCQs. So very next day, there will be analytics on this. Analytics at all levels, student, teachers, college, and even the state level. So the teacher will have the feedback the very next day before the class. Out of the 10 questions, what are those questions which were really difficult to most of them, which they couldn't get it right. So you can clear those doubts and then you can move on to the next chapter. So like this, there is teaching, learning, assessment, analytics, and again corrective action. So this overall closes the overall learning loop. So this is about the Karnataka LMS, which is more of the content and assessment and everything. So the second was with respect to the devices. So that was again the thing, as I've already told, during COVID, we came to know more than 60% of students didn't have devices, didn't have even smartphones. So that is again will lead to a digital divide. We have the platform, we have the content, but they don't have the device to access that. So we have now the honorable education, higher education minister spoke to honorable CM, and we are now providing a tab, 8 inches tab to each and every student. So we thought tab would be the most optimal solution because a laptop would be costing around 35,000. A tab would cost about 10,000-11,000 rupees. So at the most optimal possible capex, we have given tabs to each and every student. So that has solved the device problem. And the third is the connectivity issue. So connectivity. So we have devised the designed the LMS in such a way that it will work both offline and online. So, but for it to work offline, there should be some network where it will download the things to the device. So for this, we have made the entire college Wi-Fi. We have given internet access to the colleges. College has been made Wi-Fi enabled. Internet enabled Wi-Fi has been installed. So whenever the students comes to the college, he can download the content for the entire semester for 15 days, 1 week, whatever he wants to, and he can access it offline at his home. So all these three components will go a long way in bridging the digital divide between rural and urban colleges, rural and urban students, and between the government and private institutions. And the one with respect to the divide, I would like to say again, you were mentioning about the collaborations with Infosys Springboard, with Cognizant, and even with TCS we're doing now. So in the Infosys Springboard, they have provided about more than 3,000 courses in all the emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, all those things. So again, the point was that even though the platform has now been made available to all the students of the government colleges, without the devices they couldn't have accessed it. So now with the device in each and every student's hands, the sky is the limit. They can have access to any platform, any content. Okay, so that will open up enormous opportunities for students. That is, I would like to say.
Yes. So something to Mr. Joshi. So in between, we have had the higher education minister speak about the new age courses like digital fluency, artificial intelligence, and cyber security becoming a part of the higher education curriculum across colleges and universities across the state. So, how is this expected to help Karnataka position itself as the next leader in creating a space in the technology segment? So, we like these courses. What is the expected outcome of these courses?
Okay. Uh, I would like to refer to Future of Jobs report 2020 released by World Economic Forum. which talks about the top 20 job roles that are available in the days to come, which includes data analysts and scientists, AI and machine learning specialists, big data specialists, digital marketing and strategy specialists, digital transformation specialists, business development specialists, business services and administration managers, like this. And if you look at the declining jobs, the list includes data entry clerks, admin and executive secretaries, accounting, bookkeeping and payroll clerks, accountants and auditors, client information and customer service workers, and like that. And please look at the curriculum. The curriculum today gives the skills and competencies which are best suited for these declining jobs, not the emerging jobs. If you look at the top 15, this is from, job perspective. And if you look at the same report, it talks about top 15 skills for 2025, which talks about analytical thinking and innovation, complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, creativity, originality and initiative, leadership and social influence, reasoning and problem solving and ideation, service orientation, persuasion and negotiation. These are the top 15 skills for 2025, according to that Future of Jobs report. Look, please refer to NEP. NEP also talks about exactly the same things. NEP also talks about exactly that. See, the question that we were wanting to address was, should technology learning, technology skills, technology-specific skills be confined only to engineering and such people when technology has had pervasive influence on society? If Karnataka has to continue to leapfrog, retaining its leadership position, I think we need to broaden our base. So addressing, keeping this in mind, we have introduced 3 courses. There are skill courses once again. These skill courses, one is digital fluency, where technology has become common sense today. Everybody is using cloud, everybody is using cyber security, everybody is using AI, everybody is using analytics. But then should we not, I'm not talking about digital literacy, I'm talking about digital fluency, where an undergraduate student is expected to pick up a conversation with anybody in terms of these technologies, which has become common sense. And if you look at the market, you have a lot of market in cyber security and AI. So this is where we thought we must design courses that are aligned with national occupation standards of NSQF. Any course that is designed cannot qualify to be called as a skill-based course. In 2013 only, Government of India has come out with this National Skills Qualification Framework. So we were very careful as government, we were very careful in picking up the partner and picking the course from, we have picked up NASSCOM as our partner. We picked up these 3 courses, and these courses are NOS aligned, National Occupation Standards aligned, and then the content is available. The competencies are well defined as per national standards. Assessment is also addressed. And then the question is, how do we make it inclusive? How do we ensure that, this? So that is where, once again, even the way we have created this, even a student in rural area using the same tab that is given or his smartphone should be able to access the learning content and give the assessment from his device. He does not need to have a PC. Even the laboratory exercises, the practical exercises that are created, most of them can be done on the smartphone or device. And then we have given freedom to universities. In addition to what NASSCOM is doing in terms of assessment, they can as well do the assessments. And we have Karnataka State Higher Education Council has entered into an MOU with NASSCOM. Now all universities are getting MOU. We have started training the teachers. University-wise, we have started training the teachers. So for us, what we are looking at is, through this experimentation of introducing skills, it is not adding a course. It is seamlessly integrating learning experiences so that the graduates become relevant to present day market needs. It is not welding yet another course into yet another subject into our curriculum. It is seamlessly integrating, keeping the learners' learning styles and global standards of global standards in mind. So those are the perspectives that we have brought into this, and this is only an experimentation. And we want universities to learn from this and then enrich further. Thank you.
To Mr. Pinto, from the private institutions' point of view, um, what is the focus that the private institutions are doing at present to create an all-rounded personality in each student? Again, something that the NEP professes about. Now the NEP being implemented from this particular year, initially there were some hiccups and challenges about even private institutions slightly missing out on the idea of how the implementation would take place. But then we, uh, we, we all begin probably something looking at the final outcome. So the final outcome being bringing out an all-rounded personality for each student. What is Christ doing at present? So maybe something that the government also can take you off for the other institutions. So like for mutual learning perspective. You're on mute, sir. Please unmute.
Okay, okay, thank you. One is that private institutions are not one basket. I mean, they are very different. They're driven by their governance models. Who is the founder? Which are they corporate aligned, non-corporate aligned? So they are a very complex mix itself. It's very difficult to talk about private as one entity. Second is majority of the private, many people tell you that more than 72% of institutions in India are private, by the way. Higher education, about 40,000. So they're a much larger player than what we would like to. Of course, even in the university space now, they probably will outnumber the government institutions very, very quickly, even before the rolled out. Second is that majority, if you look at the university space, majority of the universities which are private in nature are not universities in the way NEP imagines, which is multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder engaging universities. And NEP's vision is, which is laudable, is to see them that they become what they are, what the first knowledge report, which Radhakrishnan talked about, the university should be, or what now NEP says university should be. I mean, that's certainly a very laudable thing, that they include all knowledge disciplines that this world has, and then leave it to the students to see what they want to leave it and pick up, which is, I think, is a certainly laudable thing. Second is, Christ, because comes from an extremely broad, and by the way, university traditions. If you look at the traditions, the medieval university from where we have evolved, the focus was the overall development of the students. It is not that it didn't imagine it to be an overall development student. It was only in the 19th century, the German model, where the focus went away from the individual who is development to developing people who are useful for the government and the state. Right? And that's where the research became very important. In fact, the idea of the university is not focused on research, it's personal development. But in the mid-19th century, early 19th century, in Germany, the model evolved where the focus became research and development of society through policies and scientific interventions, which went to US and ultimately, with the national education policies come to India now after so many years. In terms of what Christ has been doing is that because it is into a religious order. By the way, you must also remember that medieval universities also, in fact, not just medieval, all universities in the world actually began with religions. In India, it was Buddhism. In Europe, it was Catholicism. In US, it was Protestantism. In Northern Africa, it was Islam. Middle East, it was Islam. So technically, universities came from religious ethos, and therefore they had that kind of a sense of personal development built into them, and not just purely developing a person's mind. And considering that Christ, of course, comes from the tradition, it's true that parents many times make a choice if they want to develop, they will send the student to Christ. So one thing it is to ensure that we do not focus only on disciplinary education, that they only do arts, they only do science, they only do, which is what Philip is also saying, or only do commerce, and that's some silos that we'll have to break. Of course, in Christ, what we did way back in 2014 is to say that all art students compulsorily should take 2 courses to graduate, either from commerce or from science. That was required. If you don't take and if you don't pass, you fail, you don't graduate. So that was in terms of broadening their worldview to other disciplines. The second thing, which is of course, we've been doing for a very long time, is that we ensure throughout that there's a lot of peer culture that develops. The focus is on, in fact, Mr. Joshi did speak about peer being an important dimension of learning when initially made his comments, and ensure that we create enough spaces, sitting spaces, activity spaces, to ensure the students from law and arts, law and commerce, they meet, they debate, they fight together on platforms. That is an important part of the education at Christ, where we, I mean, and it's very, it's not that other institutions are not doing. I think all of them have some activities. That I think the focus has been much more enhanced and very strategically thought out in the context. It's also that I mean, just to I'm not saying this, that I'm saying that each institution has to develop its own ethos around this vision, part of which comes from the state and the government, and part of it has to come from within. And unless we align, I don't think we can have a more meaningful education. So what we do is that we don't have arts block, science block, commerce block. Ensure that within the same block we put multiple disciplines. So the teachers, not just students, also teachers talk to each other around these disciplines. Some of the things that we do keep doing around, and you've been doing, and we want to do further in terms of how we can make education all rounded, as well as multi worldview based in terms of how students people out of institutions. There's a lot to be done. I'm not saying including Christ are doing enough. I think there's a huge ground to cover. One of the biggest challenges are histories, right? Rote learning, as Mr. Joshi mentioned in the beginning, has been part of the minister also mentions part of our heritage. How do we get away from that? It's not something that one institution 1 year can do. It's a much bigger task that all of us have to take on. And those are bigger challenges in some other disciplines, social science and humanities. They're not as big a challenge, engineering and sciences, where we can move faster. So those are the challenges that we have to grapple with in terms of how do we move ahead and change this. Thank you.
Over to Mr. Nagaraju. So at the end, while we were speaking to the minister, he had spoken about the possibility of partnerships with the government and the industry as well. So from the Adobe perspective, especially with the company working in different SARC nations as well to develop education according to the situations there, what are the possibilities that you see can be done in the coming days in Karnataka, especially again on the lines of the implementation of NEP to make things better?
I think the first things first, that one needs to note, and NEP also emphasizes, learning is definitely not a spectator sport, right? It is a two-way street, and it requires an open-ended thought process in terms of amalgamating multiple learning styles, and also multidisciplinary in nature. One shoes does not fit all is what is the clear message that is clear and loud. Now, stepping two steps backwards, if I were to look at Karnataka, we have what 51. I would say close for every 1 lakh of our population, there are roughly about 50 odd colleges in the state, right? And if I were to just superimpose this image on the total number of jobs in demand, going by the World Economic Forum or any other critical surveys like the LinkedIn surveys as an area, I think there is a significant gap in terms of the number of skilled manpower that we would probably need from an industry standpoint. Even if I were to take the projection of 2023 or 2024 and 2025 as an area. Now, let's work towards bridging these two numbers as an area, right? If you were to take some of the top industries which are in growth phase, and it is a hockey stick for that matter in terms of the graph. The first that comes up is the digital commerce as an area, right? If you were to look at any of the commerce today, be it entertainment, be it e-commerce, be it digital governance, look at any of our government digital initiatives that is happening. There's a significant explosion that's happening in the industry as an area. Now, similarly, is a large explosion happening in terms of experiences, which are happening in multiple amalgamation of engineering slash, design space, product design, product innovations as an area. Now, those are, critical areas if you were to look at the outcomes, as to how do we plug, critical masses into some of these areas, we need partnerships. Industry needs partnerships with academic institutions to build for the future. There's already enough and more base that has been built for the present and maybe for the next 6 months. But the aspect of it is, if you have to accelerate, one of the key things that I would like to emphasize is most of the nations, many of our SAARC countries, whether it is Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, or even for that matter, some of our Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia. So they all have been partnering with many of the industry leaders, even in the developed world. Different parts of USA. I wouldn't say entirety have been partnering with us. Adobe has had the history of partnering with more than 150 government higher education as well as the mission mode projects across the globe. Some of them, have happened in Karnataka as well, in bits and parts, and many of them have benefited from it in the past. The point I'd like to emphasize on is pick up the top three skills in demand, which will make stupendous impact for the next 3 years, at least from a roadmap standpoint, and work backwards jointly with two critical, industry players. It could be things like what we are doing in digital, which includes expertise on design, web, video, 3D, or it could be something to do with creation of spatial, tools for that matter, or it could be AI and ML and various other cloud computing stuff that we've been doing on the technology space already in the advanced space. Because fundamentally, Karnataka is already strong in some of the basics aspects of it. Second aspect of it is to reach the masses. Many of these high-end skill courses needs to go in a much more broader way, touching different linguistics needs of the state as well. Because many of the students and faculties, when I talk to them, what I hear is there's a barrier of language as well across the entire state. And it is important for us to break those silos. The third part of it is, from a partnership standpoint, it is not important just to establish center of excellences of one particular technology. It could be from just one engineering side or from an ITI part of it. But it's important for you to open up the corridor across multiple areas of specializations and ensure that it reaches every institution across the country. Just to give you an example, we have a partnership in New South Wales, Department of Education in Australia, right? And the entire landscape of New South Wales as a community, all colleges and institutions have an equal access to Adobe tools to across the both private and public institutions, signed at an overall district level. Similarly, we are happy to explore partnerships and make some of these learnings available so that they are equally available to most of these students across the landscape. And to top it up, incidentally, in India, many of these, tools are used by ITITS players, digital entertainment companies. The amount of openings that are there, exceeds more than 3 lakh assignments in the southern part of India, at least. Majority of them hovering between Bangalore, different parts of Karnataka, some amount of Hyderabad, and some amount of Chennai as well as an area. So given this background, what I would recommend is, given the critical skills in demand, some of the World Economic Forums, different agencies, both government and public institutions, looking at having a clear need, not just for the current fiscal year, but also for few years down the line. There is a critical need for investing time, money, energy, resources, and more important than anything, also bringing the faculty up to speed that you got to go above and beyond than what you're currently delivering. And there is a need for amalgamation of many of these, subjects, tools, more so in the practical versus theoretical flip model, which is more like 80% practical and 20% theoretical, because the learning curve is much more faster, and their students will be able to understand the nuances of actual practical problems when they actually fail, learn. That's the sinusoidal wave that we have seen in the corporate learning curve of 0 to 2 years experience brackets as an area. So in short, pick up the top three, skills in demand, which have got, bigger leg space for growth, 3 to 5 years horizon. Involve industry, leaders into your panels when you're making these decisions, so that we can help you understand which final thread of some of these skills can make a humongous difference. Third part of it, implement, execute, execute. I would pronounce the word execute multiple times because we've seen multiple ministries across the country, many parts of the developing nations surrounding us talk, but lack the speed of execution. By the time they execute, it's already obsolete. The technology is already obsolete. So please go ahead and implement it, and we are always there to support you on many of these initiatives.
Yes, thank you. So on that positive note, we would try to conclude this particular panel discussion. Thanks to all panelists for joining us. Over to Anishri. Yes, so this was the first among many of educating states, the discussions that we'll be having in the coming days as well. We began with Karnataka because Karnataka is at the forefront of implementing the national education policy in India itself. Thanks to our speakers of this particular panel, Professor Gopal Krishna Joshi, who's the Executive Director of the Karnataka State Higher Education Council, Mr. Pradeep P. From the Department of Collegiate of Education, Commissioner, Government of Karnataka, Dr. Anil Joseph Pindo, the Registrar of Christ University, and Mr. Supreet Nagaraju from Adobe. Thanks a lot to everyone, and thanks to our viewers also. We've had quite a few questions that were coming up in the question and answer segment here as well, but then we are delighted to have covered all of them in between our discussions, at least in some of the questions here. Special thanks to the Minister's Office also for coordinating this with us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ralph, and thank you, Indian Express, for organizing this wonderful interaction. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Pleasure meeting you. Thank you. Bye-bye.